Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Shafick Hoossein, and I'm a senior environmental specialist at the World Bank, leading the air quality discussions in Pakistan. My apologies that I'm not there today. I have, however, been very impressed that I'm allowed to join online, and I would like to essentially give you a presentation on the various aspects of financing air quality in Pakistan. But before I go there, there are two numbers that I'd like you to be very clear about. The first is 7.5 million. 7.5 million doesn't actually attribute to anything like GDP or anything along the lines of the the issues around various aspects across the world, but it's more personal. This is the amount of times the average human being breathes. You see, this is the breathes during the course of a year. So, what I'd like to be very clear on is I'd like to ask you how many times you breathe in clean air if you're breathing 7.5 million times a year. This is a global issue. 99% of the world population currently doesn't breathe in air quality that actually meets the WHO standard of 5 micrograms per cubic meter for PM2.5. This is an issue that is very clear in Pakistan and South Asia and the region as a whole. The next figure I'd like you to be aware of is 1%. 1% is only the amount that is provided to international funding for addressing outdoor air quality. Of the 16.4 billion that is provided to air quality out of the 1 trillion that is provided to the international to actually amount to it. Let's bring it a little bit back home. Currently, Pakistan is part of what is considered to be the Indo-Gangetic Plain and Himalayan foothills. This region is the most polluted hotspot area across the 4 countries. This includes Bangladesh, Nepal, India, as well as Pakistan. This particular airshed has about 1.2 billion people in it. And unfortunately, that includes those that are in Pakistan. Globally, 2.3 billion people are exposed to outdoor air quality levels that are greater than 35 micrograms per cubic meter for PM2.5. And most of these live in South Asia. The eye of the storm in terms of air quality lies within the Indo-Gangetic Plain and Himalayan foothills, as it is the most polluted hotspot currently. Air pollution has significantly reduced human capital and development and the economy. If we're talking about financing it, financing air quality, we need to identify the issues. The first being in the South Asia region, 2.2 million people have premature deaths each year. That is the average South Asian losing, on average, the life expectancy of 5 years. The average South Asian lives more than 2 weeks a year suffering from air pollution related diseases. And just think about it, how many times you've had a prolonged respiratory infection or issue or virus. The most significant diseases include heart disease, lung disease, and diabetes. The adverse health effects have high economic costs in terms of reduced labor productivity and foregone output. The annual welfare costs in South Asia, in that particular Indo-Gangetic Plains and Himalayan foothill regions, has been estimated to cost 10% of the GDP per annum. So from a healthy life to a disease or disability to an early death, which has reduced expected life years. However, let's talk about what the current status quo of funding is. I've already asked you to memorize a number, a figure, 1%. That just 1% of international funding targets outdoor air pollution projects in the time period between 2019 and 2023. This underfunding is persistent and it's a chronic issue. Our analysis shows that the most polluted low and middle income countries, particularly in the most vulnerable areas, are missing out on funding almost entirely. Second is the scarcity of funding. Scarcity of grant funding hampers progress. The types of funding is critical. This is a stark contrast to the 63% share of grant funding across other developmental assistance. 92% of air quality funding is provided in the form of loans. Only a third of those loans are actually at concessional rates, essentially rates that are more favorable and not at the market rate. And 2/3 of it are at the market rate, which creates a debt hurdle and will hinder the uptake of vital assistance. One other thing I'd like to bring to your attention is the issue of black carbon. Black carbon receives smaller amounts of funding despite its unique climate and health impacts. And this is due to the fact that we only have 0.1% of donors funding that supports black carbon. Black carbon, which affects both climate and health impacts and dually, only amounts for 18 million of the 16 billion of funds that were provided to air quality between 2018 and 2022. More funding to tackle black carbon could actually unlock significant benefits, both in the climate sector as well as the health benefits. However, I'm not going to be one to be a negative Ned on this particular issue. The solutions are within reach. We have seen this across the world where we have worked and reduced the amount of emissions that are caused by countries in their developmental cycle, looking through certain integrated policy packages. This comes with conventional air pollution controls, as well as decarbonization policies that reduce impacts like black carbon emissions by almost 2/3. The integrated approach is critical to ensure that we address the issues of poor air quality. I started my presentation by talking about two numbers, 7.5 million, the number of breaths you take a year, but also that 1%, which is the amount of development financing that is given to air quality projects. But this is another aspect that I'd like you to also consider and possibly memorize. These three buckets of priorities of accelerating investments towards clean air. And we've got very good examples of this from various particular areas. If we look at strengthening institutions for air quality governance, this will first of all place clean air at the center of government's economic and welfare agenda, empower an airshed like the Indo-Gangetic Plains and Himalayan foothills to achieve results faster and reduce the cost. Second, leverage information. Invest in collecting, assessing, and leveraging air quality data. This has been seen very well across the world in many of the projects that the World Bank has done, but also has been seen and rolled out currently in the Punjab work that has been done under the Punjab Clean Air Program in collaboration with the World Bank. This particular program looks as well as engaging citizens on clean air action, raising an awareness about this particular issue, because only through awareness raising can you bring about the behavioral change that is needed to address poor air quality, as well as prioritize the most cost-effective emission reductions first. And we do this through various modeling and interest in in ensuring that clean air is dealt with. But this will be followed by Bangladesh, Nepal, and India. The policies that create clean air markets also needs to be looked at. How do we start linking economic development with reducing the issues around air quality? Establish the attractive environments for private sector investments, critical to ensure that the private sector is also involved in this. A lot of what the private sector is trying to ensure is making profit. However, that profit needs to be linked to ensuring we're also addressing the issues, the environmental issues like air quality. Lastly, redirecting environmentally harmful subsidies and policies like fertilizer subsidies, which contribute to secondary pollutants in air quality. These particular aspects need to be re-looked at and seen how we can address them. Those three buckets are what at the World Bank we are looking to do through our various programs to ensure that we address poor air quality, but ensure financing is provided for it. Lastly, significant additional financing is needed to address air quality, the air quality target. From our estimates, we identify that additional cumulative investments that is needed to halve the number of people exposed to high levels of poor air quality and to meet the WHO interim target of 25 micrograms by 2040 needs an investment of 3.2 trillion. This is obviously a great effort. However, as a share of global GDP, the investment cost following the integrated approach that we have suggested, we recommended actually falls from 1% of global GDP to 0.4% by 2040. This would require us to increase funding from 8.5 billion in 2020 to 13.9 billion annually until 2040 to ensure we can address the issue of climate change. Well, climate change and poor air quality. However, we also talked about ensuring that both the public and private investments are done in clean air. And these need to look at specific areas like strengthening monitoring and results measurement, linking financial incentives to results achievement, and appropriately blend finance to achieve payback methods for clean technologies that allow for a rapid market penetration. Together we can do it. We can ensure that that 1% increases much more than where it is currently, ensuring that we bring back to the 7.5 million, going back to the 7.5 million breaths you take a year. Let's try and ensure that you can breathe much better in the future. On behalf of the World Bank, I thank you.